Ethan adjusted his security badge as he walked through the lobby of Apex Tech Industries, the morning sun casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. 5 years ago, he'd started here as a security officer. And 5 years ago, he'd met Sophia at the company's summer barbecue. She'd been new to the marketing department, nervous about her first big job, and he'd helped her find her way when she got lost looking for the restroom. They'd laughed about it on their first date. Now, as he rode the elevator to the ground floor security office, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Sophia had always been dedicated to her work, but the past 2 weeks had been different. She'd been coming home at 9 o'clock, sometimes 10 at night, her eyes tired, but evasive when he asked about her day. "New project," she'd say, kissing his cheek before heading to the shower. "Big presentation coming up. You know how it is." He did know how it was. Apex Tech was demanding, especially in the marketing division where Sophia worked on the 7th floor. But something in her voice, something in the way she wouldn't quite meet his eyes had planted a seed of doubt that grew larger each passing day. Ethan settled into his chair at the security desk, monitoring the cameras that showed every floor of the building. He'd never used his position to check on Sophia before. Felt wrong, invasive. But today, he found himself pulling up the 7th floor feed, watching the figures move past the cameras like shadows in an aquarium. He saw her at her desk, head bent over her laptop, completely absorbed in her work. Nothing suspicious, nothing unusual, just Sophia doing her job. "You're being paranoid," he muttered to himself, switching back to the lobby feed. But paranoia, once it takes root, is hard to uproot. That evening, Sophia texted him at 6:30. "Working late again. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you." Ethan stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the reply button. Through his security monitors, he could see the 7th floor was still busy, lights blazing in the marketing department. He could even see Sophia's silhouette moving past one of the cameras. "No problem. There's leftover pasta in the fridge. Love you too." He sent the message and leaned back in his chair, a plan beginning to form in his mind. The next morning, the company-wide email arrived. The annual Apex Tech corporate party this Friday evening at the Riverside Hotel. Ethan usually skipped these events. He didn't enjoy forced socializing with people from departments he barely interacted with, and Sophia always went alone, coming home with stories about awkward small talk and mediocre catering. But this year would be different. "I'm thinking about going to the party with you," Ethan said that evening over dinner, watching Sophia's reaction carefully. She looked up from her plate, surprise flashing across her face. "Really? You never go to these things." "I know, but I thought it might be nice. We barely see each other these days with your late nights. Could be fun." Something flickered in her expression. Was it worry, guilt, or just surprise? "That would be great," she said finally, smiling. "It'll be nice to have you there. Though I have to warn you, these things can be pretty boring." "I'm sure it'll be fine," Ethan said, returning her smile. But inside, his mind was already working through what he needed to do. The next 3 days crawled by. Ethan paid closer attention to the 7th floor security feeds, noting who came and went from the marketing department. He saw Sophia's manager, Marcus Hale, a slick-looking man in his 40s who seemed to spend most of his time in meetings. There were her colleagues, Liam Park, friendly and casual, always with a coffee in hand, and Tyler Reed, younger, confident, the type who loosened his tie by mid-afternoon and had that easy charm that made people laugh. Ethan watched them interact with Sophia through the grainy security footage, professional, normal, nothing to suggest anything inappropriate. But the doubt remained, gnawing at him like a persistent ache. On Thursday evening, Ethan visited the equipment room at the security office. Among the various devices they used for surveillance and protection, he found what he needed: a small audio transmitter, barely larger than a button with a range of about 300 feet. He signed it out, claiming he needed it for a training exercise. The device felt heavy in his pocket, weighted with implication. That night, lying in bed next to Sophia, Ethan stared at the ceiling and listened to her breathing. She'd come home at 9:30, exhausted but affectionate, curling into his side as they watched the late news. She seemed like the same woman he'd married, The same woman who'd laughed when he'd helped her find the bathroom all those years ago. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe this was all in his head. But tomorrow he'd know for sure. Friday arrived with the weight of anticipation. The Riverside Hotel's ballroom glittered with strategic lighting and corporate branding. The Apex Tech logo projected onto the walls in rotating colors. Ethan tugged at his collar, uncomfortable in the dress shirt and slacks he rarely wore. Beside him, Sophia looked beautiful in a navy blue dress. Her hair swept up in a way that made his heart ache with a confusing mixture of love and suspicion. "You okay?" she asked, squeezing his hand as they entered the crowded room. "Yeah, just not used to these things," he said, forcing a smile. The ballroom was already full of Apex Tech employees, clustered in groups by department, drinks in hand, voices rising above the background music. Ethan scanned the crowd, his security training kicking in automatically. He spotted Marcus Hale near the bar holding court with a group of senior managers. Liam Park was at a table with his wife laughing at something on his phone. And there near the buffet table was Tyler Reed, already on what appeared to be his second drink. His tie loosened just as Ethan had seen on the security footage. "Let me introduce you to some people," Sophia said, leading him toward a group from her department. The next hour passed in a blur of handshakes and small talk. Ethan played the role of the pleasant spouse, nodding and smiling while his eyes constantly tracked the room, noting who approached Sophia, how they interacted, what their body language revealed. Marcus Hale approached around 8 o'clock, a glass of scotch in his hand. "Sophia, great to see you," he said, then noticed Ethan. "And you must be the husband Ethan, right? Sophia talks about you all the time." "Nice to meet you," Ethan said, shaking his hand. Marcus turned back to Sophia, his expression shifting to business mode. "Listen, I hate to talk shop at a party, but I wanted to check in on the Henderson project. We're getting close to the deadline." "It's coming along," Sophia assured him. "I've been putting in the extra hours this week. Should have the preliminary presentation ready by Monday." "That's my star employee," Marcus said with a satisfied nod. "Keep up the good work, both of you. Enjoy the party." As Marcus walked away, Ethan felt a small measure of relief. So, there was a real project, not just an excuse. But that didn't explain everything. Liam Park wandered over 20 minutes later, his wife by his side. "Hey, Sophia. Glad you made it," Liam said warmly, then noticed Ethan. "Oh wow, the mysterious husband finally appears. Sophia is always leaving early from company events to get home to you." "Nice to meet you," Ethan said, shaking both their hands. "Where were you earlier?" Liam asked. "I thought you two came together." "Bathroom break," Ethan lied smoothly. "Well, you're missing out on some pretty good shrimp cocktail," Liam said, grinning. "Nothing like free food to make corporate events bearable, right?" They chatted for a few more minutes, Liam and his wife telling an amusing story about their recent vacation disaster. They were genuine, kind, the type of colleagues who made work bearable. Ethan found himself liking them, and more importantly, seeing nothing that suggested any inappropriate connection with Sophia. But Tyler Reed hadn't approached yet. Around 8:30, Ethan made his move. "Hey, I'm not feeling great," he said to Sophia, touching his stomach. "I think that shrimp might have been a bad idea." Concern immediately crossed her face. "Do you want to leave?" No, you stay and enjoy yourself. I'm just gonna go sit in the car for a bit. Get some air. If I feel worse, I'll text you." "Are you sure?" "Positive. I don't want to ruin your evening." He kissed her cheek, and in that moment, as he pulled away, his hand brushed against her dress, leaving the small audio transmitter attached to the fabric just below her shoulder blade, hidden in a fold. "Text me if you need anything," Sophia called after him as he headed for the exit. Ethan walked through the hotel lobby and out to the parking lot, his heart pounding. The cool air cleared his head. He sat in his car, pulled out his phone, and activated the receiver app connected to the transmitter. Sophia's voice came through clearly. Mid-con conversation with someone about the appetizers, Ethan sat in his car, the phone pressed to his ear, listening to the ambient noise of the party filtering through the tiny transmitter. Music, laughter, the clink of glasses, And somewhere in that sonic tapestry, his wife's voice, clear and close. He felt like a spy in his own marriage, and the feeling made him sick. For several minutes, nothing significant happened. Sophia chatted with someone from accounting about vacation plans. She complimented someone's dress. She laughed at a joke Ethan couldn't quite hear. Then a male voice closer now. "Sophia, there you are." "Oh, hey, Tyler." Sophia's voice replied, friendly but neutral. "Oh, tensed." "Tyler Reed. Great party, huh?" Tyler's voice was smooth, confident. "Though I have to say it got a lot better when you walked in wearing that dress." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "Thanks," Sophia said, her tone remaining polite but slightly cooler. "Have you tried the appetizers?" Liam was right about the shrimp. "Forget the shrimp. I've been wanting to talk to you all week." Tyler's voice dropped lower, more intimate. "You've been working so late these couple weeks, burning the midnight oil on the Henderson project." "Yeah, it's been intense. I've been staying late too, actually. Same floor, just a few offices down. Funny we haven't run into each other." "I usually have my door closed when I'm focused," Sophia said. "That's a shame." There was a pause, and Ethan could almost picture Tyler moving closer. "You know, we should grab a drink sometime, just the two of us. There's this great wine bar downtown." Ethan felt his chest constrict. Here it was. "Tyler," Sophia began. "Come on, it doesn't have to be a big thing," Tyler continued, his voice taking on a persuasive quality. "Just two colleagues unwinding after work. Your husband wouldn't have to know. What he doesn't know won't hurt him, right?" The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Ethan held his breath, every muscle in his body tense, waiting for Sophia's response. When she spoke, her voice had changed completely. Cold, firm, with an edge of steel that Ethan recognized from the rare time she was genuinely angry. "Tyler, I'm gonna stop you right there. I don't know what you think is happening here, but you need to get something straight. I'm married. Happily married. And even if I weren't, I'm not interested in whatever you're suggesting." "Hey, let me finish. I've been working late because I care about my job and this project is important. Not because I'm looking for attention from coworkers. And the fact that you would suggest I hide something from my husband or that what he doesn't know won't hurt him, that's completely out of line. Sophia, come on. Don't be like that. I'm being professional, which is more than I can say for you right now." Her voice was ice. "I think it's best if you keep your distance. We can be colleagues, but that's it. Are we clear?" "Jesus, I was just trying to be friendly. We're done here, Tyler." Ethan heard footsteps, then Sophia's voice, slightly distant now, greeting someone else with her usual warmth. The conversation with Tyler was over. He sat in the car, the phone still at his ear, his emotions a complicated tangle. Relief washed over him like a wave, but beneath it was shame, sharp and bitter. She'd been faithful. She'd been working. She'd been exactly who she said she was, and he doubted her. Ethan turned off the receiver, pocketed his phone, and got out of the car. The walk back into the hotel felt longer than it should have. Each step weighted with the realization of what he'd done. He'd let paranoia poison his trust, had used his skills and his position to spy on the woman he loved. When he entered the ballroom, he spotted Sophia immediately. She was standing near the windows with Liam and his wife, laughing at something, but there was a slight tension in her shoulders that he recognized. The encounter with Tyler had rattled her, even if she hadn't let it show in her voice. As Ethan approached, her face brightened. "You're back. Are you feeling better?" "Much better," he said, and meant it in ways she couldn't understand. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman who'd been working herself to exhaustion on an important project, who deflected unwanted advances with grace and firmness, who defended their marriage without hesitation. "Dance with me?" he asked suddenly. Sophia looked surprised. "You hate dancing. I know. But there's a slow song playing, and I want to dance with my wife." She smiled, excusing herself from Liam and his wife, and let Ethan lead her to the small area where a few couples were swaying to the music. He pulled her close, feeling the small transmitter still attached to her dress, a physical reminder of his mistake. As they moved slowly to the music, Sophia rested her head against his shoulder. This is nice. I'm glad you came tonight. Me too. He needed to remove the transmitter without her noticing. His hand moved to her back, finding the small device and palming it smoothly. Years of security work making the motion natural and undetectable. Is everything okay? He asked softly. She pulled back slightly to look at him, a knowing smile playing at her lips. Not really, no? His heart skipped. What's wrong? This Henderson project is killing me, she said with a small laugh. I'll be so glad when it's done. Maybe then we can actually have dinner together at a normal hour. When do you present? Monday. Then a few more weeks of revisions and it'll finally be over. She sighed, resting her head back on his shoulder. But you know what? Once I turn in that project, everything will be fine. More than fine. I already told Marcus I'm taking a few days off afterward. I thought maybe we could go somewhere, just the two of us, like when we first got married. Ethan felt the tension he'd been carrying for 2 weeks finally release its grip. I'd like that. They swayed in silence for a moment. Then Sophia spoke again, her voice quieter. Ethan, can I tell you something? Of course. Tyler Reed hit on me tonight after you left. Ethan's step faltered slightly, but he recovered. He did? Yeah. It was pretty uncomfortable, but I shut it down. She lifted her head again, meeting his eyes. I just wanted you to know, no secrets between us, right? The shame Ethan felt earlier deepened, but beneath it was something else. Admiration for this woman who'd chosen transparency over concealment, who valued their relationship enough to be honest, even when it might have been easier to say nothing. No secrets, he agreed, his voice thick with emotion he hoped she'd attribute to relief about feeling better. Good, she smiled. That brilliant smile that had captivated him 5 years ago in this very building. Because you're stuck with me, Ethan, for better or worse. Remember. I remember. He pulled her closer, the small transmitter now safely in his pocket. A reminder of a mistake he'd never make again. And I wouldn't want to be stuck with anyone else. As they continued to dance, Ethan caught sight of Tyler Reed leaving the ballroom, his posture defeated. Liam and his wife waved at them from across the room. Marcus Hale was telling an animated story to his group of managers. Everything was exactly as it should be. Sophia was exactly who she'd always been. And Ethan had learned something invaluable. Trust once broken was hard to repair. But trust maintained even when tested was the foundation of everything that mattered. I love you, he said quietly. I love you too, Sophia replied. And in her voice he heard no deception, no doubt, only the simple truth of a promise kept. The song ended and they stood there for a moment longer, holding each other in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by coworkers and colleagues, yet somehow alone together. When they finally pulled apart, Sophia took his hand. Let's get out of here. I've had enough corporate party for one night. Best idea I've heard all evening. As they walked toward the exit, Sophia chatted about the party, who she'd talked to, the funny story Liam's wife had told about their vacation. Ethan listened, responding when appropriate, but his mind was on the small device in his pocket and the lesson he'd learned the hard way. In the parking lot, as they approached his car, Sophia suddenly stopped and turned to him. Hey, random question. Do you ever feel like we're drifting apart? Like with my late nights and your shifts? Ethan thought carefully before answering sometimes. But I think that's normal. Life gets busy. What matters is that we keep choosing each other. Right, right. She squeezed his hand. After this project wraps up, let's make more time for us. Real time. No work, no distractions. Deal. They drove home in comfortable silence. The city lights streaming past the windows. When they pulled into their driveway, Sophia leaned over and kissed him soft and sweet. Thank you for coming tonight, she said. It meant a lot having you there. Anytime, Ethan said, and meant it. Inside their home, as Sophia went to change out of her dress, Ethan took the transmitter from his pocket and looked at it. Such a small thing, but it represented something larger. The choice between trust and suspicion, between faith and fear. He placed it in a drawer buried under some old papers where he'd never have to see it again. Later, as they lay in bed, Sophia curled against him. Ethan stared at the ceiling and made himself a promise. He would never doubt her again without cause. He would communicate instead of surveilling. He would trust instead of test because that's what love required. Not perfection, not certainty, but the courage to believe in someone even when fear whispered doubt. Ethan. Sophia's sleepy voice broke the silence. Yeah. Thank you for trusting me. He pulled her closer. Always. And as he drifted off to sleep, Ethan realized that the real test hadn't been of Sophia's faithfulness. It had been of his own character, and he was grateful that despite his mistake, he'd found his way back to what mattered most. The Henderson project was successfully presented that Monday. Sophia came home early for the first time in 2 weeks, exhausted but triumphant. They ordered pizza and watched a movie on the couch, her feet in his lap, laughing at the same jokes they'd laughed at 100 times before. It was ordinary. It was perfect, and it was built on a foundation of trust that Ethan would never take for granted again.